So good evening, everyone. Welcome to another online session with another amazing educator from the US. So tonight's topic is really interesting because we will talk about literacy and leadership. And before we share more details about tonight's topic, I would like to remind the audience of the main mission of Everyone Academy, which is bringing educators together, learning from each other, exchanging experiences across borders, and developing effective collaboration either online and or offline. So I am very excited and thrilled to welcome Dr. Dorothy from the US. As I said, she will talk about this topic, literacy and leadership, and she will also talk about creating a culture of learning and opportunities for collaboration and building teacher and leader capacity. This is very exciting. So I am very sure that we will learn a lot from Dorothy tonight. So I will let her introduce herself to the audience, and then we can start sharing the presentation. And after that, we will engage in discussions. We will try to answer some of the comments or the questions that we will get on the Facebook Live. So welcome, everyone. Welcome, Dorothy. Welcome to Everyone Academy.
Awesome. I'm excited to be here. I have a lot of energy, so I'm sorry if I'm too much for some of you, but and then I have so much to say, so you might have to slow me down. And if there's questions, just feel free to interject at any time, because this is really learning from one another, and that's what we want to do, no doubt. Learning from educators, not only within your area, but throughout the world. That's what we want to do. We don't want to be on an educator island where we're just in our own little world. We want to have opportunities, and Zoom allows for that, which is an inexpensive way to do it. So this is a nice feature of Zoom, and it's nice to connect with all of you. So I'm excited. My name's Dorothy VanderJagt. I've had a lot of roles in my career. I'm an old person, lots of roles, we'll say a seasoned veteran teacher, administrator, central office administrator, college professor, and now I work with a university on a grant for literacy and leadership. It's the High Impact Leadership Project. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too tonight. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. So hang on, throw in any comments you want. I'm going to share my screen, and we'll probably go back and forth with this. So as you know, the title is Literacy and Leadership, and connect with me. You know, as we said in the beginning, connect. I'm on Twitter. I have a website. Connect with me at any point. If you're thinking, oh, I want to look at this presentation. What is she talking about? She's going too fast, or I didn't catch what she said. Hang on. So, it's a bit.ly, the bit.ly, you're familiar with bit.lys, right? And then if you just click on that literacy and leadership, so it's bit.ly/literacy and leadership, only a capital L for literacy, and then and leadership, a capital L. They're case sensitive. You can get to this presentation. So it's not a problem. We can put it in the chat as well. So years ago, I was, like I said, a teacher, a principal, and then I transitioned into a director of teaching and learning at an education service agency. So what it is in the U.S., and this is in Michigan, every state's a little different. Everybody has different things going on in the state, but it's a organization, a service agency of a county. So I had a county that the curriculum directors would come in, the principals would come in, the superintendents would come in. It was a place where everyone collaborated. So a lot like what you're doing now, but we did it a lot face to face. So we started collaborating with a neighboring ISD and some other ISDs, and we decided that we should maybe kind of find out what's working well within our own counties and other counties throughout West Michigan, because I'm in West Michigan. So we had a field study team. So I was on this field study, and some of the field members, study members that went into these schools, and we conducted instructional rounds. So if you're not familiar with instructional rounds, it's based on Harvard University instructional rounds model. You can look that up later, but it's we go in and we gather data. We go in and we observe classrooms, and we look for specific areas that we may be looking at that we focus on before. We collect data points, and then after we have all our notes and all our visitations, we get together, we use sticky notes, we theme and categorize what we've seen, and then we share that out with the staff and the principal as well. But when we did this original study, we went into schools that were outperforming other schools, and there were, out of 260 schools, there were 14 that were outperforming other schools based on socioeconomic status and other factors. And what we found in this study is that there were 5 areas within all these schools. So we thought, how come some schools are outperforming others with literacy? Is it the leader? Is it because they had a reading background? Maybe that's why. Because the first one we observed, she had a reading background. So that makes sense, right? Well, then the next one we observed, no, the principal was a high school German teacher. So he did not have a reading background, yet his school was outperforming others. So as we observed all these 5 schools and we came up with our findings, we noticed that, number one, all these schools had a laser focus on reading. They weren't doing 18 different initiatives. They were focused on one thing, and the staff could tell you what that area was of focus. So they were laser focused. They had a collective responsibility. When you walked into these schools, it was really all hands on deck. It wasn't just my group of kids in my classroom. Those kids in the school were all the kids. All the kids in the school were everybody's kids. That's how they felt. One teacher said, hey, I'm their last line of defense. This is it. So they really felt an ownership. One of the students struggled a little bit with having a mattress, and one of the schools had pulled together, the teachers did, and helped that student out. The schools range. They weren't all low income. Some of them were high income. It just depends. Some of them were outperforming the other schools. So it wasn't that they didn't all, in poverty. They weren't all in poverty. All right. So collective responsibility, laser focus, and then they knew their data. Not only did the teachers know the data, but the students knew the data. So the teachers could tell you why they were gathering data. They had data dialogues, what they were looking at, why the data was important. They knew why they were collecting data. And then they had data walls and their data dialogues. They have different things that they could share the data. One principal had all the data in her office on a wall. And of course, the names were covered up when anyone would come in there, wasn't a staff member. And the students knew where they were with whatever level or whatever assessment, because they would talk about it and communicate it with the teachers. So the students knew and the teachers knew, which was very impressive. Classroom management was focused on learning. So they had an all hands on deck, again, a consistent management plan within that school, and it was shifted to focus on learning rather than being reactive. It was more proactive, and they had consistent expectations throughout the school. And then the last one was shared leadership. So shared leadership, the teachers were part of this. It wasn't just the principal was the manager and that was it. There was a shared leadership, which goes back to number 2, that collective responsibility. So everybody felt a part of the school, and teachers felt like they could lead and be valued. And it was just great for the principal as well too, because the principal, even though you have an amazing principal, they don't know everything. I was a principal, so to have teacher leaders were fantastic. It helped me as a leader, and it helps leaders if you share that leadership, and it also helps with that collective ownership. So there was trust in that staff to do the shared leadership. There's a couple websites as we go through, and again, they're on the bit.ly link you may want to refer to. And the project that I'm involved in is with the grant is the 𝐬𝐜𝐴𝐻.org website is the second one. How did that even come about? Well, one of the university partners watched this grant, watched us present, knew what we were doing, and she's like, this is really amazing research. And so she really kind of delved into it, and she ended up writing with another partner at the university a grant, and she was awarded a $12.5 million grant to continue the work of what we had discovered. Of course, with parameters that she had kind of envisioned and put together, and I can share those in a little bit. So, what I'm involved in now started way back in 2014 from these high performing schools. So, a lot of the literacy work we use now in the grant is the literacyessential.org website. So, the two websites I'll just pop real quick and then I'll pop back. Oops, that's not it. Maybe I won't. I'm going to go right here and see if I can. There we go. I know, see, I'm fast. So, this is the Literacy Essential website. And this has instructional practices on here that we utilize within our grant. So we use these for the literacy component, and there's a lot of things. Your literacy essentials here, there's birth to age 3, pre-K, K to 3, the grade level bands. And then there's also grades 6 through 12 that recently have been on the site. So that's exciting to see. There's also coaching practices and some other things that may interest you. So this is just an amazing resource that we utilize, our schools utilize. Many educators in Michigan they'll talk about the literacy essentials, the essential practices, and that's what they're referring to when you go to this site. So essential instructional practices in language and emergent literacy is the birth to age 3 one. So you just go through, if you click on this essential practices, you can get to what you need. So that's a really useful website. And then the website for the grant that I'm a part of is right here. And this is the Hill website, High Impact Leadership. And it has a lot of different components on there. So the schools that we've worked with, we had 152 schools. We have a Cohort A and we have a Cohort B that we work with. And that's on this website too. So you can check that out later if you're interested. That gives you a little bit of knowledge there that you can research. So we have quite a few schools in our project. In our Cohort Bay, this is 5 years. We're on year 5 of this project that I'm in. And the first cohort was Cohort A, and now we're in Cohort B. And it's amazing because each school is allocated from our grant a facilitator that walks alongside them with the principal and the leadership team. So there's a leadership team. And it's literacy and leadership, remember, because the principal is such a huge component in the school and the morale and the culture. You want to make sure that you have your leadership on board when you are doing any initiatives, and when you have allowed the teacher leaders to be on that team as well, more change can happen because there's a bigger buy-in. So we've just seen such movement with this grant, and we're so excited about it. So over the course of time, we have 152 schools that have been in either Cohort A or Cohort B. And right now we're in our last year of Cohort B. But really, the principles and the premises of the grant were based in these 4 different areas. They're the high impact leadership principles. So we have positive core, we have evidence-based decisions, we have collective ownership, and we have organizational learning. So positive core goes back to everything that we know as good educators, right? We want to have a growth mindset. We want to show appreciation. We want to be strengths-based. Because I don't care if it's the teacher or the parent or the child, if you're talking to somebody, what happens? You hone in as a person on, oh my gosh, they said 18 positives, but they're telling me this growth edge or this negative, and I'm just all flustered about that. And that's all I could think about. Well, even Brene Brown in her comments, she's a big author and motivational speaker. She'll say it gets easy, sometimes to go right to those comments from the people that are in the cheap seats that aren't very positive, right? So we want to make sure we have a positive environment. We want to have it mission focused and vision focused. We want people to feel safe, the students to feel safe, the staff to feel safe. You want parents to feel welcome in the community. It's a partnership. Everyone learns more when it's a partnership. So we want to have that positive core, and we really work on establishing that in the schools. And many of the schools have great starts when we begin in this process. So it's nice to work with. There's a collective ownership we want throughout this grant. So it's not just the principal that's dictating things. It's a shared responsibility. They work together to help one another. They lead different PD, so professional learning opportunities within their staff meetings. We have a HIL, so high impact leadership team. They have a HIL team, and that team helps guide the staff, and it works with the principal. So our facilitators, which is really similar to a coach, an instructional coach going in, we call them facilitators. They work with the principal and they work with the leadership team. And then we want to make sure anything we do has evidence-based decisions, right? We want to make sure it's grounded in research, and that's the literacy essentials I showed you earlier. It has to be grounded in research, because it's easy to just take, oh, so-and-so did this, or oh, so-and-so did that, oh, this is fun, or blah, blah, blah. We want to make sure it's grounded in research and then it's proven to work. That's critical. So you want to make sure you're progress monitoring, you're looking at leading and lagging indicators, which we can talk about a little bit more of what our artifacts are. So we have artifacts as we go along that each team produces. And then, of course, the organizational learning, we want it to be a reflective practice. So we don't just throw out the data and say, yep, that looks good or whatever. We ask questions about the data. What are you seeing in the data? What's a prediction that you're making with the data? Why are you saying that? So let's say that Mr. Smith is on your team. Well, Mr. Smith, why are you saying that? How are you coming to that conclusion about the data? So there's dialogues about the data. There's questioning to further the thinking and levels of learning. And always we want systems thinking, so it's a continuous renewal cycle. It's not just a one and done, we're out of here. We want to make sure there's sustainability. So after these coaches, our facilitators, aren't with them anymore, we want to make sure there's sustainability. So we're putting that into place too. We have, if there's questions, you can just throw them at me. But phase 1, we have 5 phases that we go through in this project as well. So phase 1 starts out, and it's really the why, the vision, the strengths, and the literacy, like an excitement for literacy. That's what we want. And everybody's all hands on deck. This is what we're doing. This is exciting. This is our mission. This is our vision. We're literacy focused, and there's an excitement for it within the building. And then the second phase is a current state. We go through the current state and then look at opportunities for growth. So we look for opportunities for growth. So here's where we are. Yeah, what are opportunities for growth? Because we have a current state, and then in phase 3, what's our desired state? So here's where we are, but here's where we want to be. And then in phase 4, we have a monitoring plan. So that's when the implementation of the monitoring plan happens. And each school develops their own monitoring plan based on their data and their growth edges. And phase 5 is that school renewal cycle. So we want to make sure this is continuous. So once you've finished your phases 1 through 4 and you go through and you have your artifacts, it's not ending. It's continually looking at the data, continually asking questions, continually revising growth edges if need be the case. And what are our priority growth targets for students? So it's like a target. You're getting laser focused on what that target is. So this chart is about our aligned process and deliverables about school renewal during our phases, and you could see they're on here, but if you have that bit.ly link, you can look it up later where you can probably see better. But phase 1 is at the top. It's really up there tiny at the top where my cursor is, and it says develop an appreciative strength-based growth focused vision. So some schools you'll go into and they are just all on board with that, and some schools have had a lot of transition, maybe a lot of different principals, and they're just trying to get back together on a routine. So the schools do vary in the levels that they're at, even in phase 1 as we go into those schools. But I give all the schools credit. They've been amazing to work with, and they all want the opportunity for growth, and that's just awesome as we go through this process. So phase 2, we develop a school performance profile. And if you look kind of how that is, the little areas in the growth phase 2 here, you have the strengths, you have growth edges, growth targets. You look at your strengths and your growth targets with, students, classroom practice, leadership and support. You're looking at all of it. As we move into phase 3, the process, we want to align all these growth targets. So we want to align them and make sure that they're evidence-based. So whatever we want to work on, it's evidence-based. So we have our strengths, we have our growth edges, but we want to make sure it's grounded in that research again. So maybe we have an area of growth that we're going to work on. We can't just make up some activity that we think is going to be good. We refer back to the essentials, and we want to make sure that it's grounded in research or in another area. We want to make sure no matter what we're recommending and the strategies we're using are grounded in research. And then in phase 4, we activate a monitoring system or progress monitoring system. So we keep track of that growth plan. We have indicators, benchmarks, measures, and every school is a little bit different on what they're using. It might be assessments, it might be state assessments, it might be what they're using within their schools, and that's okay. That is okay. People can use different real-time monitoring. Everybody's using something different, and potentially that's okay. We just want to make sure as we go through this process, all of our recommendations are grounded in research. So it's not just, maybe somebody wrote this book and self-published it, but there's not really research on it. It's just what they think. You want to be cautious with that. But maybe they self-published it and it is grounded in research, and that's okay. But just make sure that you are checking your sources, because you need to make sure it's grounded in research. And then when you get to phase 5, we want to make sure that we can go through that cycle and renew and look at all that information again and make sure that everybody's doing well and needs, getting the support they need. So if you go down to the bottom of this chart, the deliverables that you'll see in the different phases. So the first one is really, what am I going to see if there's a positive core? Well, we see that collective ownership. We see that there's evidence that they're making decisions based on research, and we see that organizational learning going well with their mission and their vision. So phase 2, what is our deliverable for that? Well, it's a school performance profile using multiple indicators and success. That's what we have them put together. And so during that time, they're identifying strengths and growth edges for students, classroom, support, and leadership. So there's different areas. It's not just, hey, what can students work on? It's, hey, what are growth edges for students, classrooms, leadership, and then school conditions. So we identify 2 to 3. So it's encompassing the school. It's not just focused on how do we improve the student. It's like, okay, let's look at all areas of our school. The school is a whole. There's a whole school here. How can we all have growth edges to help student success and literacy? And you can apply this really to any content. And then phase 3, we have a gold standard implementation guide for classrooms. So each school develops this, and it's based on whatever they're working on, their growth edges. So they have a gold standard implementation guide, and we have them for the classroom, the leadership, and then the school conditions as well. And then what are we working on, and what are these? And we want to make sure no matter what we're doing with these gold standard implementation guides, that we do them with fidelity and integrity. So we want to make sure that we're looking at all these growth edges, and then what strategies are we using? They're based in evidence, research, they're research based, and then how
you are stressing the importance of research.
Yeah. Can you say that again?
I said you are stressing the importance of research.
Oh yeah. Yes, we are, because and I know that when these projects are funded, like this is a federal grant, and you have to have it based in research, because universities, that everything based in research, it has to be based in research. You might do something in your classroom as a new teacher. I was like, oh, this is great, and I'd go present, and this works, and this works, and this works. Well, maybe it worked in my school, but it didn't necessarily work 3 cities down in that school, because things were different. So you want to make sure that things are grounded in research. And yes, that's absolutely true. And then we have a monitoring plan, and that's phase 4, that we keep looking at that monitoring plan. And then our last phase is kind of a dashboard for everything that we're in the process of looking at that now and developing that with our year 5 Cohort B, where that they can just go back to that and utilize all this information even when we're not part of the grant anymore. So that's a really quick overview of a big project, but it's what I'm giving you right now.
Yes, before you proceed, maybe we can ask about what is the objective of the cohort. Is it, for example, providing more resources to teachers, or to see how to implement the project? What is the purpose, the objective of the cohort A and B?
Oh yes, that's great. So we're going to kind of compare that data of A and B. That's a great question. Why do we have two? Yes, we're going to look at cohort A and we're going to look at cohort B. And really, part of it was we wanted to see what was working so well in cohort A that we could continue to use with cohort B. So they were, that first sample that we could look at and to really prove that the project was working so that we could have a cohort B as well and to kind of continue the work. So the results were great and we did see progress and we did see success, so we were able to continue to get project B, the cohort B, funded as well. But what's nice about cohort A and cohort B is one of our goals right now is to network the schools together. So we have schools networking and we make sure that's part of what we call them summits. So they're like a big conference with these schools, and it used to be face to face before COVID, right? So we would get all these, we have 300 400 people in a room because they're leadership teams, the principals, sometimes they're curriculum people. There's so much energy with those face to face. It's fun.
Yes.
It is fun. We do them on Zoom and we still connect, and that's great too, but just getting those face to face, those were just awesome.
So
And that
you also connected literacy to leadership.
Mhm.
Is there a purpose behind this one? Why you connected literacy and leadership?
Well, it's critical that your leaders of your building are involved in literacy too, because think about years ago, I worked with some administrators that even said, "Oh, I don't," they'll say, "I don't know science, that's your part," or "I don't know reading, you guys do that." I mean, I've heard that from people, and even though your major might have been math or science, I don't announce to the teachers that's not your expertise, or so you want to, not that you have to fake it to pretend you're an expert, but learn. I mean, you're a continual learner. It is your responsibility to know what the teachers are teaching, to know good literacy practice, because that is the foundation for success for students, period.
Absolutely.
Literacy. We want them literate. And so the principal has got to know what good literacy is. And, I know there's research on if the principal is, an advocate of literacy, that he embraces it, he or she embraces it, it's going to be successful for the students. So, just having your good leaders, your outstanding principals value reading and, reading and writing, which they do, but sometimes they're a little bit apprehensive of it. But it's okay. Is be supportive of it, learn about it. There's so many coaches out there. There's so many online classes. There's so many websites. You could reach out to anybody, even on Twitter, like you're doing this. If you have a principal that listens to this maybe later and says, I'm not comfortable with it, but I used to teach PE. I used to be a coach. Now I'm an elementary principal, but I just let them do it because I don't want to advise them the wrong way or something. And it's like, no, be involved, go to the trainings, go to your local education service agency, become knowledgeable on it, because that's going to encourage a positive atmosphere. You're going to motivate your teachers. The more I could talk about curriculum with my teachers, the more excited that they were. I mean, they were excited when I was talking about no matter what was current and I was talking about curriculum with them, they loved it because that's what they live. And they want you to support them and they want you to know you understand it. And also at parent teacher conferences, as a principal, you could host a reading night with the kids. There's so many ways you can have exciting reading opportunities. And parents, what more do they want for their kids? They want them to read and be successful and do well. And, it's just a good foundation. What do we say? Start reading to children before they're born, and read to your toddlers and your preschoolers. And it's so critical. So the principal needs to model that reading and writing is important, and they know it, but speak the language. Be involved with the professional development. Support your teachers. Teachers want you around. Just like students want a relationship with you, raise your leadership level and be involved in teacher meetings. Be involved in the curriculum. At the staff meetings, don't just have it the copy machine's broken, we're going to get it fixed by Tuesday. There's a pothole in the parking lot, because people are upset about that or whatever. That could be an email. What could you do in your staff meeting right now that could help with literacy, leadership, math, anything, whatever your area is. And then could teachers present on that? A lot of the embedded PD, I love embedded PD. When your teachers are leading professional development in your schools, I love it. It's amazing. Sometimes it's with like the instructional rounds we talked about. There's also some things called classroom learning labs. We've had teachers lead those as well, and it's peer learning, peers from peers going into each other's classrooms. There's the learning walks that are really easy to do. They're safe to do. They're only a few minutes. Some schools that want to get in other teachers' classrooms, they start out, one of the schools I worked with, I love this school, they said, we started out safe. We didn't want to jump in and start observing each other because people get nervous when other people are in there. So at a staff meeting, they did a classroom walk. The kids weren't there. It was just the teachers. And they picked 3 to 5 classrooms that staff meeting, and they walked through those classrooms just to see them. And I was telling this story to some other people, and another school said to me, we did that too, but we focused on an area. Like if it was learning targets, we went into those few classrooms to see where their learning targets were and to talk about, how we have them in our room and what we do. And nobody had to observe each other teaching at that point, so it was safe. And some I know have staff meetings, some schools in teachers' classrooms, and they do that. But a nice way too is to walk around those classrooms without, students in there to get comfortable. And then if teachers are comfortable, you can start doing some walkthroughs with a few teachers if you'd like. So you can have peer-to-peer observations. I never had that when I started out teaching. I started out teaching a long time ago. But now that I've been a principal and a director of teaching learning and in this grant, I've had so many opportunities. I go in on those instructional round teams and I observe classroom practices. I love it. It's like the most powerful PD to have teachers on those teams talking about what's happening in those classrooms.
Are you a principal now, right now?
No, I was a principal, and then I went to central office as a director of teaching and learning.
I am asking this because maybe one of the challenges of implementing those projects is we find some principals who are somehow bossy. So they have to be a leader, not a boss. So there is a difference between a leader and a boss. And I know that you mentioned shared responsibility.
Yep.
Do you think that this is a challenge when we have some principals who are acting like a boss?
There are a few that like to micromanage, I'm going to say, and it is hard to let that go for some of them. But I think a safe way to start out, everybody, because I have a really good friend, and he loved to micromanage. He loved it. But a way we would laugh about it. I'm like, you gotta let a little bit go. Gotta let a little bit go. But he's like, well, if I don't do it, it's not done right. But you do have to empower your staff. You're going to get stronger, and you won't be as burned out. You won't be as burned out, period. I know I've watched even superintendents, some that are able to let go of that responsibility and they can focus on what's important. Others just, they can't let it go. Whether you're a principal or a superintendent, you have to delegate. You have to find some staff that you can trust. You have to empower them. And honestly, the more you trust staff and the more you empower them, I think you're going to be surprised. But one way that works well is a shared staff meeting agenda on a Google Doc. I like this because it's simple and it's not just the principal printing out a Google Doc or having control of the Google Doc or printing out an agenda or whatever, or the secretary. It's everybody can contribute to that if you want, or you could have 2 staff members contribute to that. So let's say your meeting is talking about literacy and maybe parent-teacher conferences, whatever you're talking about. Have people contribute to that. And then it's a working document that you can go back to and see what was discussed. You don't have to type everything. You don't have to dictate everything as a principal. Let teachers have some responsibility. Honestly, your staff meeting is going to be a little more exciting if you let staff members talk about instruction, if you let staff members present a little bit of instruction. If you're scared to have them present the instructional component at first, let them start out with a warm-up at the staff meeting. Some questioning in the beginning. And then transition to have each staff member present a little bit because they know what's happening in the classroom. How long has it been, principals, since you've been a teacher? That's what I remember, because I was a principal 11 years. And man, when I first came out and I was a first year principal, I had a lot of teaching experience behind me, 10 years. So I was ready to roll. But fast forward 11 years later, I had not been in that classroom, teaching in 11 years. So I need to rely on my teacher experts to help with this. So that's what I think about that. But again, you don't want to burn out your good teachers either. Don't go to the same ones, because that's a problem. If you keep going to the same 2 teachers all the time, first of all, you're going to burn out those teachers, and people think that's favoritism. So you need to distribute that leadership. Everybody has value and everyone has strengths. Figure out what it is and how they can contribute. And some people don't want to present at the meeting. They want to do something else. They might want to type on that agenda or whatever, because we have, introverts and we have extroverts. It all goes into how we're made up. But find their strengths and value them as a person. You're honoring them. You're giving them, some empowerment here. And teaching it's tough. This pandemic has been hard on people. And
Yes.
I really talk a lot about self-care too, because you want to make sure that your teachers are well in all different self-care areas, because you want them to be cared for just like they're cared for, the students.
So extroverts make great leaders.
Uh-huh. Yes. Can you say that again?
I said extroverts make great leaders.
Oh, yeah. Yes. They're very social. Absolutely. So it's easy for them to do some things where introverts may struggle a little bit, but they have a smaller circle. And if they are, and they're not as comfortable getting up, and I'm an introvert, as you can, or not an introvert, I'm an extrovert, as you could tell, have that support system that can help you, those teacher leaders. Some of you are fortunate enough, principals, to have an assistant principal. Balance that, utilize that. One may be better at the discipline area, communication. Figure out your strengths and utilize those. But the more I watch principals and teachers together, the more I realize teachers want to be appreciated. That's what people want. Students want it. We want it no matter if it's in our relationships, in our family. People want to be appreciated. And that's critical, because the more that you appreciate people, the better the culture is going to be. And there's always something to find grateful for someone. I know at times you're thinking, oh boy, but you have got to highlight that in your mind, and you got to focus on that with the teacher that you may be struggling with a little bit, to pull out their greatness, because our job is to make them better teachers, right? So your area might be literacy that you focus on. Your area might be math. It might, it could be science. It doesn't matter the area. I mean, literacy is huge and is critical, and that's what we're all about. But you can really make evidence-based decisions in any content area. You can have data conversations about whatever your growth edges are in any subject area, and you can continue to, grow in any area. But as long as you have a process within your school, no matter what it is, okay, what are our growth edges? What's our current state? What's our desired state? What are our strengths? What are our growth edges? And what are we going to use to monitor ourselves and our success? What are we going to do? And what strategies are we going to use? And we want to make sure that our strategies are strong and they're based in research, because it is exciting. I mean, to go to a conference and get all fired up, but you have to make sure a lot of those strategies are going to sustain with student learning. So make sure your strategies are evidence-based. Make sure you can go back and how are you going to measure success? What are your real-time measures? And it's like a school renewal process. You're going to go round and round and round to make sure, continually going back. It's like one of those turnabout things I hate. They have, I never know which way to go. I'm like the movie that, oh no, where am I going to get in this? But we want to make sure that we continually monitor. What are we monitoring? Because what we're monitoring, gets attention. We value that. And that's what gets paid attention to. So we want to make sure we have our current state and what's our desired state. That's an easy way to start out in the year. Even if you did an activity with your staff or yourself, you have a paper folded in half, current state, desired state. Boom. What do we want? And then you could almost draw a T-chart after that and say, okay, how are we going to get to this desired state? I work with one facilitator in my project, and she works with many other schools too, and she always backward mapping. That's her big thing. So she'll take out that whole year, and when they know what they're working on, they guide, what are we doing this month, this month, this month, and then they break it down. What months are we going to have data dialogues? Are we going to meet as a grade level team? Are we going to meet with the staff, the entire staff? And everybody has to report something back. So that principal that micromanages a little bit, maybe you could pose a question to each grade level, whether it's something with literacy or math, whatever your content area is, and they come back and then they report. The grade level reports on whatever you really are finding as a staff is important, and they can kind of share that way so that they're sharing out, but you're still a little bit in control of that question, because that makes you, that's a good thing for you. But no matter what you're doing, whether you're, you want to be that leader, you got to make sure you have followers. And how do you have followers? You have to value your people. Because if you're just directing orders and doing this and running through, because you feel that way or you read a book and this is what you want to do, look behind you. Is anybody following you? Because if they're not, you need to rethink that component. Teachers are resilient, teachers are amazing, and teachers are knowledgeable. Teachers care about kids. You have some of the most caring people in the world, and if you just sit down, empower them, appreciate them, they will move mountains for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also because if you are a boss, that means you know everything, and this is not true. No one knows everything. We learn from each other, because you might be good in certain areas, but other people are also have experience in other areas, and you don't have the time to be an expert in everything. We can be an expert in one area, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why we need. That's why we need other people to work with us. That's why we need collaboration, etc.
You need to have other people help you, because especially right now with all the uncertainties and who knows what with the pandemic, it's easy to get down a rabbit hole and just you're not taking care of yourself. You're not beneficial to anybody, really. You need to get the support of others, whether if it's in you may not be an expert in math, you might not be an expert in social studies, you can't know everything. If you knew everything, everybody'd win that, the Jeopardy. Well, then why aren't you on there, Mr. Principal? So we can't know everything as much as we want to. And it's okay to say, when I started out, I was a principal, right? But I had done a lot of presenting. But then I'm a director of a county. I mean, that was a huge, job to just go into. And there were times I'd say, you know what? I don't know, but I'm going to get back to you. And I would, and I'd get right back to them, because I had so many school districts. We had 20 school districts, 26 charter schools. There were just hundreds of thousands of students, and thousands of educators. I couldn't answer every question, but I was able to bring people back to that service agency, and they used the service agency. They trusted us, because it's like, you know what? I don't know, but I'm going to get the Michigan Department of Education on the line, and we're going to figure that out. So you don't have to know everything. And I think you show your vulnerability, like Brene Brown says, right? You're just going to even be a stronger leader. Plus, your job might become easier if people are like, you know what? I noticed that Dorothy needs some support, resources in this way. I'm going to help her out. When I notice principals, when I'll visit my schools, and one before COVID, one of the districts really was like, what are we going to do for summer opportunities? We haven't done anything. Do you have any ideas? Well, that wasn't what I was there for, but absolutely, I'm going to help you find some ideas for summer opportunities and what your district could use and what resources are available in your area. So people will reach out to you for other things once they trust you, and you figure it out, help them. And if you don't know, connect them with somebody that does. It's not a weakness to show you don't know. You can't know everything.
Yes, I see this lovely cover of your book, Permission to Pause. I will ask you some questions about this book later. I just want to talk about the challenges you faced in this project. You said that there was like 5 years you are working on this. And you also mentioned that the project was for high-performing schools, right? So what are the challenges you faced in this project, and how you managed to solve these challenges?
Yeah. A lot of them were the ones in our project were performing lower than other schools. That's how they qualified. But, in the state of Michigan, a lot of our scores, unfortunately, in literacy tend to be a little bit lower in a lot of areas, depending on what we're assessing with our state test. So, and then with COVID, the state test has been just an interesting process anyway. But some of the challenges that we faced, okay, it goes back to your comment of bosses and leaders. Some of the principals were a little bit nervous to have somebody walking alongside them, a facilitator. Can you imagine if you are a micromanager or you think you're the boss and then all of a sudden you have this facilitator working with you? So that was interesting for
Taking away the power.
It was power. It was a transition of power there, and it was letting go of some things that was hard for some of the principals. And one school, one of the principals, he just avoided, like he was trying to avoid the facilitator because he's like, I don't want to deal with her because he come to find out
especially if she's a woman.
Yes.
There is also this gender discrimination.
It could be. It could have been. We don't know. But once she was strong. She called me in tears leaving there, and she was ready to quit the project because she would see him kind of avoid her. Like seriously go into a different room when she was waiting for him in this room. And long story short, she was persistent. I'm like, you can do this. You're strong. Let's go. And I'd give her pep talks, and she really bonded with him and had a great relationship. And then he was coming to these workshops, like these conferences, which we call them summits, with her. And he's like, this is awesome. But it took her a while to break through. And what we found in that one was he just didn't feel strong in literacy. And he, that made him a little bit nervous. But once he realized, you're not getting quizzed on literacy. We're just here to give you a process for looking in growth edges in your current state and desired state. You don't have to be a literacy expert in this grant. So he felt a sense of relief, but it goes back to those relationships too, because that's the same way with students and teachers. And in this case, it was the facilitator and the principal. So that was a big one. The other part, finding the time to meet with the leadership teams, because we have a hard time finding subs in the United States. It's a hard time finding subs in Michigan, substitute teachers. So
yes.
It's hard. So the meeting times would have to be, not during the school day necessarily, with some of the schools, because that was a big challenge. And then when COVID came, oh my goodness, that was a huge challenge because people everybody was worried about COVID. Everybody didn't know if they were online or face-to-face. And if they were face-to-face, they weren't going to let visitors in. So we had to shift to trying to coach online too and facilitate online. And then some of our schools wanted our facilitators in face-to-face. They went back right away and weren't remote. So we had a variety of schools in our project in Cohort B that were all different phases. Some of them were face-to-face, some of them were hybrid, and some of them were online. But that was a challenge, finding time, because people were tired, and people were stressed, and teachers didn't necessarily know how to teach online. So they're like, oh my gosh, I got to do this. I'm not sure I can meet with this project right now. So we had to learn to help them virtually and how to offer some strategies and whatever we did with our facilitators, like my coordinating team, my management team, whatever we were working on with them, how can they take that virtually and help these teams? So that was a big shift for everybody, which in the world, that was a big shift, I think, for everybody. We had a few online schools before in Michigan, but nothing like, well, everybody needs a device, everybody needs the internet, here we go. And, you know, you still have some teachers that aren't comfortable with technology. They
Yes.
just aren't. So,
Everywhere.
yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Everywhere. Everywhere. And I
Uh,
have a 16-year-old, soon be 17-year-old, and, you know, they're so adept with technology. And so they can go and they can fix things and they're so fast. And it's like, I'm like, okay, you know, I'm pretty good, but can I imagine teaching a bunch of those kids that are, you know, faster and quicker on technology and are thinking, oh man, how do you share your screen? Come on, woman. You know, that's what they're thinking. So that was hard for teachers. I jumped in on a class because I have a couple friends that teach and I like to do that. So I got on with her for her first, and she was at the middle school level, and she didn't know how to do Zoom. She didn't know how to screen share. She didn't know, you know, and I am all of a sudden in this class with her, and it's a science class with all these middle school kids, and they're staring at us, and she can't figure anything out. So I actually started teaching her and talking to the kids, you know, hi everybody, blah, blah, blah. And then I would kind of walk her through it. But it really was an eye-opening experience to me that teachers were not really trained in technology or as comfortable just, you know, they sharing the screen, highlighting things. Where's your Google Doc? How do you put it in here? How do you keep attendance? I mean, yeah, it was just hard on a lot of people. So, you know, last year, some of our schools, like, I mean, that first year with the pandemic when it came out, everybody was home. That was it. It was online, and it was just crisis teaching, like Fisher and Fry say. From, you know, it wasn't really pandemic teaching. It was just let's get through, you know, let help. And then last year, people had more strategies. There were more resources to help them, more platforms. So, like I said, some were face to face, some were virtual, and some were hybrid. But you know, even the face to face people, the kids were quarantined so much, or the staff members, it was just a crazy thing. So now we're in the situation of we're waiting, you know, each state's kind of waiting to see what happens and if people will be masked up or not masked up. But most of the schools we work with have said we're going to be face to face this
yes.
coming year. Yeah,
So that was really great. Can you talk more about your the permission to pause? How where teachers can find it? What is it about? Etc.
Yep. I'll give you a quick overview of it. Of course, during this, you know, pandemic, self-care and taking care of yourself, it's hard. You had teachers we have teachers, even if you look in the United States, saying, hey, I'm about done. You know, this is a lot for me.
So it is about self-care, right?
Yeah, it's about self-care. So, because
That's
we've had a
great.
lot of people
Maybe we can have a session about it.
That's a whole nother session. You're right. That is. I'll just quick show it to you. But yeah, a lot of people felt
Because
overwhelmed.
we did some sessions about self-care in this stressful times, and
Oh,
we would love to hear
yeah.
from to see your perspective. It sounds
Yeah.
like a great title.
Yes, this is Permission to Pause, a journal for teachers. So it's really reflective. It gives ideas to use in the classroom in the back. It gives some ideas for you, but it really has reflection prompts as you go through. So what area of self-care are you focusing on? And then, you know, what are you going to do today? It kind of holds you accountable. This journal really does hold you accountable. So I've had some of my Twitter PLNs say, you know what? I use this. It keeps me on track. It gives some quotes to motivate that tie back into what the prompting questions are for the day. And it's, you know, how can you become a better teacher, even you know, even better than you were yesterday, even though maybe yesterday was amazing? Or what do you do with that challenging coworker? You know, what are some strategies for that? So just some different ideas for the areas of self-care and things you can use in your classroom. But yes, I'm working on another self-care book that is grounded in research with Connie Hamilton, and she's fantastic too.
Great.
So that'll be out next year.
So maybe you can schedule a session about this in the future.
Yeah, we could do that. That would be awesome. It would be fun because
So
I got a lot of energy, people. So that would give us
yes, I see reading, I see exercising, I see mindfulness. So all
yes,
these areas are really great for teachers. So
yes.
you said that there is another second book coming. What other projects, future projects you have uh, in addition to writing?
Yep. We're Connie Hamilton and I don't know, you probably know a lot about her. She's an author for Hacking Questions, and we are working together on a self-care book. So that's just a big one because we're really worried, about our teachers, and we want to do as much as we can for them because it's a challenging time, and even not in a pandemic, it's challenging to be an educator. It's hard, you have all this.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. You have parents, you have administration, you have kids, and I know every country's different. We've seen kind of a division here, and people are very vocal, and teachers, they're just trying to teach. That's all they want to do is help your kid and teach. So we want what's best for those kiddos. So we're trying to. Connie and I are really focused our efforts. We met this morning, and we're trying to, do to help.
Are you still brainstorming ideas, or you finished some chapters?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we're always doing something and working with schools, of course, on literacy and leadership and all sorts of areas that people want. Connie's doing some questioning. I'm working with some schools on some self-care keynotes. So it's good. It's good. All good work because it's all for teachers. That we love our educators.
Yes, thank you so much. This was really a great session. And we can, as I said, we will program another session with you. You are really you are talking with passion about your about educators, about so you really give us a lot of positive energy. So thank you for this great energy in the room.
Good. Stay the course, people. You're doing well. You're doing a great job, and we love our teachers. We love you.
Thank you so much. Do you have any final comments before we close the session?
My final thoughts are just do what's best for kids. First of all, take care of you because that is critical. Second of all, stay the course. Don't get distracted by chirping, 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 chirping. Stay the course and do what's best for kids.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dorothy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.